After being cruelly thrown out by her wealthy in-laws, single mother Amelia Rivers is left homeless with her sick baby and no one to turn to, until a mysterious millionaire stops his car, takes off his expensive jacket and wraps it around her child. The rain came down hard on the side of the lonely country road as Amelia Rivers crouched beside her daughter, barely shielded by her torn shawl. At 28, with tangled dark hair plastered to her face and tear tracks marking her light brown skin, Amelia was the picture of despair. Her baby Ava, only 6 months old, coughed weakly in her arms, wrapped in a thin pink onesie soaked through. Amelia had been cast out just hours before, her late husband's parents blaming her for everything from his death to the cost of caring for Ava's fragile health. Now she had nothing but the baby clutched to her chest, and a bag of baby formula she couldn't mix without clean water. As headlights approached, Amelia pulled her daughter closer, shielding her from the splash of oncoming wheels. She didn't expect the car to stop. She didn't expect the man in the tailored navy coat and polished shoes to step out. And she certainly didn't expect him to take off that expensive coat and wrap it around her child. "She needs warmth," he said softly. That moment would change everything. The thick wool coat swallowed baby Ava like a cloud of warmth, and Amelia could only stare as the man's hands, steady and clean, carefully tucked it around her child. The contrast between them was impossible to ignore. He, immaculate in slacks and a cashmere sweater beneath his coat; she, barefoot and trembling in muddy jeans and a threadbare top. Amelia's eyes darted to his car, a sleek black Jaguar engine humming softly, and then back to him. He crouched beside her, his voice a mixture of concern and gentleness. "Is she okay? She's wheezing." Amelia nodded slowly, not trusting her voice. "Just the cold. She's had a cough." "Where are you headed?" I don't know," she whispered, clutching Ava tighter. He hesitated, then extended his hand. "My name is Gideon Vale. I have a place nearby. Clean bed, warm food, medical care if she needs it." Amelia flinched. Why? Because no mother and child should be out here like this. His sincerity didn't feel rehearsed. There was no pity in his eyes, only quiet urgency and a trace of sorrow that mirrored her own. After a long silence, Amelia took his hand. She didn't know it yet, but that decision would be the first step in reclaiming her life. The drive was quiet, broken only by Ava's soft coughs and the sound of tires slicing through puddles. Amelia sat rigid in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the sleeping child in her arms. Gideon didn't press her with questions. He only adjusted the heater to blow warmer air toward the back seat and handed her a bottle of spring water from the center console. After 20 minutes, the car turned onto a long tree-lined driveway. Amelia's jaw clenched as towering gates opened ahead. A modern glass and stone mansion emerged from the mist, glowing softly in the rain. She'd once married into wealth, only to be cast aside like trash. She wasn't ready to walk into someone else's world again. But Ava coughed violently, and the warmth inside beckoned. Gideon parked near the entrance. "Come on, the doctor's already on the way." Inside, everything was polished marble and soft lighting. A middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair, his housekeeper, rushed to take their wet things. Blankets were offered, a fire crackled in the grand living room. Amelia stood frozen, heart pounding. "This place," she murmured. "It doesn't feel real." Gideon smiled faintly. "Neither did my grief. Maybe this is how we make it real again, by helping each other." That night, Amelia stayed awake by Ava's side in the guest room. The child had been placed in a crib brought in by staff, but Amelia sat on the floor beside it, her hand resting through the bars. She feared closing her eyes. What if this was a dream? What if the kindness ended at sunrise? Her mind replayed the last year like a reel of torment, her husband's sudden illness, the funeral, the cruel accusations from his parents, and finally being shoved out with nothing but her baby in her arms. The door creaked open. Gideon peeked in, holding 2 mugs of tea. "I figured you might not sleep either." Amelia looked up, surprised. "You can't sleep either?" "I haven't really, in a long time," he admitted. He sat across from her on the floor, placing the mugs between them. They talked softly in the dim light, about nothing, about everything. Gideon's sister had died 5 years ago. He hadn't spoken of it to anyone in a while. But here, with Amelia, it was easier. For the first time in months, Amelia didn't feel entirely alone. Morning light spilled through the wide windows, casting golden streaks across the floor. Amelia awoke in a chair, startled to find that she'd fallen asleep at all. Ava was nestled in the crib, breathing easier. Her fever had broken sometime in the night. A soft knock on the door preceded Gideon's entrance. He carried a tray, toast, eggs, fruit, and a small note card. "The doctor says she'll be fine, just a cold. But you need to eat." Amelia blinked at the food. "Why are you doing this?" He sat on the edge of a chaise near the window. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything and feel like no one sees you. You don't owe me anything, Amelia." That was the first time he'd said her name. It made her chest ache. She ate slowly, eyes flicking between the sleeping baby and the man who, without knowing her story, had shown more humanity than anyone else in years. "I'll find a job," she murmured. "I won't stay long." "Stay as long as you need to," Gideon replied. "You don't need to earn your right to breathe." Amelia wasn't sure if she wanted to cry or hug him. Days passed in a blur of warmth and quiet care. Amelia slowly began to accept the safety of Gideon's home, though her instincts constantly warned her not to get too comfortable. Her past had taught her that kindness often came with strings. But Gideon never asked personal questions. He gave her space. That, more than anything, made her want to talk. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills beyond the estate, Amelia stood on the balcony with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Gideon joined her, keeping a respectful distance. The silence between them was not awkward, it was full of understanding. "I lost my sister to pneumonia," he said softly, staring out into the orange sky. She was only 19. Amelia's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to open up. "I was traveling," he continued. "Business. I missed her last moments. I don't think I ever forgave myself." She turned to him slowly. "I lost my husband 2 years ago. A car crash. His parents blamed me, said I made him reckless. Their grief, though different in origin, mirrored each other's. Neither sought pity. They only wanted to be heard, and in that moment they understood. Healing didn't require grand gestures, just shared silence and honest words." The next morning, Amelia found herself seated at a long, elegant breakfast table. Ava, much improved, cooed in a high chair, playfully banging a spoon against her tray. The normalcy of the scene was almost jarring. Gideon entered holding a tablet, his expression serious but kind. "I wanted to show you something." He turned the screen toward her. It was an apartment listing, small, modest, and close to a reputable daycare. "I've set this aside in your name. It's paid for 6 months. After that, you decide." Amelia stared at him, stunned. Why would you do this?" "Because you need a fresh start. Not just survival. Dignity." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. No one had spoken to her like that in so long, not since before everything fell apart. "I don't want charity," she said softly. "This isn't charity," he replied. "It's a bridge. You can walk across it, or not. But either way, it's yours." She realized then that Gideon wasn't trying to rescue her. He was offering her the tools to rebuild. For the first time since she'd been cast out, Amelia felt something that bordered on hope. Just as life began to regain its rhythm, the past came knocking. Literally. Amelia had taken Ava for a walk on the estate grounds when the gate buzzer startled her. Moments later, Gideon's assistant called her to the foyer. 2 sharply dressed individuals stood waiting. Her late husband's parents, Elaine and Victor Statham. Her heart thudded violently. "What are they doing here?" "They claim to have legal concerns," Gideon said calmly, standing beside her. "But you don't have to face them alone." Amelia straightened her spine. "I will." Victor's voice was cold. "You disappeared with our grandchild." "That's kidnapping," Elaine added. "We have custody papers. Ava deserves stability." Amelia's anger flared. "You threw me into the street. You threatened me. You never even looked at her after your son died." Victor smirked. "You were never fit to raise her. We're correcting a mistake." Gideon stepped forward, voice like steel. "This woman is under my protection. If you proceed, we'll meet in court. And I promise we have more resources than you." Amelia looked up at him, a mix of fear and gratitude in her eyes. She wasn't alone anymore, and this time she would fight. Gideon wasted no time. Within hours, a top legal team was assembled. Papers were filed to counter the Statham's custody claim. But the pressure mounted. The court date was set. Amelia would have to relive every part of her trauma publicly. She sat at the dining table, hands shaking as she signed affidavits and reviewed documents. "What if I lose?" "You won't," Gideon said. "You're Ava's mother. You've done everything for her. But the courts always side with money," she whispered. Gideon leaned closer. "Then it's a good thing you have mine." Amelia didn't laugh. She couldn't. The fear was too real. Gideon reached out, placing his hand over hers. "We'll tell the truth. We'll present your side. And if it comes to it, I'll testify about what I saw the day I met you." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you." Later that night, alone in her room, Amelia cradled Ava and whispered, "I'll never let them take you, never." And for the first time in a long time, she believed in her own words. The courthouse was a cold, sterile place, but Amelia walked in with her head high. She wore a simple navy dress borrowed from Gideon's housekeeper, and carried Ava in her arms. Gideon walked beside her, his presence unwavering. Inside, the battle began. The Stathams painted Amelia as unstable, negligent, and manipulative. Their lawyers paraded medical records, exaggerated financial stress, and even questioned her mental health. But then it was her turn. Amelia spoke calmly, her voice strong. She detailed the years of verbal abuse, the sudden eviction, the nights spent on the street. Her voice trembled only once, when she recounted how Ava nearly choked from fever in the rain before Gideon found them. When Gideon took the stand, the courtroom hushed. "I found them on the side of the road. That baby was freezing. That woman was willing to sleep on wet concrete to keep her alive. If that's not love, I don't know what is." The judge listened intently, eyes unreadable. By the end of the hearing, the decision was delayed, but the damage to the Statham's credibility was clear, and when they exited the courtroom, Gideon whispered, "No matter what happens, I'll be here. You don't have to do this alone." That evening, back at the mansion, the house was quiet. Ava had fallen asleep without a fuss, almost as if she understood that her mother needed a moment to breathe. Amelia stood in the hallway outside the nursery, staring at the moon through the tall window. She didn't hear Gideon approach until he was standing beside her. "You were incredible today," he said gently. Amelia gave a tired laugh. "I was terrified." He tilted his head. "That's what made it brave." For a while they said nothing, just stood together in the silver glow of the moonlight. Then softly, Amelia asked, "Why do you care so much?" Gideon hesitated, then said something she hadn't expected. "Because I see in you the fight I couldn't find in myself when I needed it, and maybe because helping you is helping me." Amelia turned to face him. "You saved my daughter's life and mine too, in a way." There was a long silence between them, charged, tender, but neither crossed the line, not yet. Some healing, after all, still needed time. The following morning, Amelia found a letter in the nursery drawer. It was one she had written to her husband months ago, but had never mailed. Somehow, in the chaos of being forced out of her home, it had ended up tucked into Ava's diaper bag. She sat alone in the garden with it, heart pounding as she unfolded the paper. The ink was smudged, the handwriting shaky. In it, she had begged for strength. She had poured out the grief she couldn't say aloud, admitting how scared she was to raise Ava alone, and how broken she felt without him. Reading it again, Amelia didn't cry. She felt something else, clarity. That letter had been written by a woman clinging to the past. She folded it gently, placed it back in the drawer, and then took out a blank page. This time she wrote to herself. She wrote of courage, of what she had survived, of the fire inside her that had refused to go out. She didn't need anyone else's permission to be whole again. It happened in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Amelia had been helping the housekeeper fold laundry in the sunroom while Ava played on the carpet with some new toys Gideon had quietly ordered. Then, out of nowhere, a high-pitched giggle rang out. Amelia froze. Ava clapped her tiny hands together and burst into another peal of laughter, her cheeks flushed with joy. It was the first time Amelia had heard her daughter laugh since her husband died. She scooped her up, tears already brimming. "That's my girl," she whispered. "That's my strong, beautiful girl." The housekeeper smiled. "She feels safe now." Later that evening, Amelia shared the moment with Gideon. "She laughed," she said, beaming, like she had forgotten all the fear. Gideon leaned back in his chair, smiling warmly. "That's how you know she's healing." "And me?" Amelia asked softly. He met her eyes. "You're already halfway there." In a world that had been stripped of joy, Ava's laughter returned a piece of it, and it reminded Amelia that happiness wasn't gone, it was just waiting for its moment to return. Just as life began to steady, a phone call shattered the peace. It came late in the evening. Gideon answered in his study, his voice dropping into a serious tone Amelia hadn't heard before. When he returned, he looked different, guarded, tense. "What's wrong?" Amelia asked. "The Stathams, they filed an emergency appeal. They're bringing in new testimony. It's happening tomorrow." Amelia's chest tightened. "What kind of testimony?" Gideon looked away. "A nurse, from the hospital where your husband died. They claim she'll say you delayed his care." "That's a lie," she gasped. "I was the one who called the ambulance. I stayed with him the whole time." "I believe you," Gideon said firmly. "And I'll make sure the court sees the truth too." But Amelia knew how damaging a lie could be when dressed in credibility. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, her body still, her mind racing. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with her yet, but this time she had people fighting beside her, and that made all the difference. The courtroom was colder this time, the pressure more intense. Amelia's hands shook as she took the stand, the judge's gaze fixed on her. The Statham's lawyer grilled her about the night her husband died, tried to paint her as negligent, even cruel. Then the nurse testified, claiming Amelia had seemed distracted and slow to act. Amelia wanted to scream, but instead she looked at the judge and said clearly, "I stayed with my husband every moment. I called the ambulance. I held his hand while he slipped away. I would have traded places with him if I could. But you can't bring someone back by rewriting their death." She looked directly at the Stathams. "And you can't earn love by destroying someone else's." When she stepped down, the room was silent. Gideon met her at the back with a nod of quiet pride. "You didn't just defend yourself," he said. "You reminded them who you are," and in doing so, she reminded herself too. 2 weeks passed before the verdict arrived. Amelia sat at the kitchen counter with Ava on her hip when the envelope was handed to her. Gideon stood close, silent, his expression unreadable. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, and then tears. But this time they were from relief. Full custody awarded to Amelia Rivers. The judge cited her unwavering presence in Ava's life, the strength of her support network, and the emotional testimony she gave in court. She dropped into a chair, clutching the paper to her chest, whispering, "We did it, baby. We did it." Gideon placed his hands on her shoulders. "You did it." And in that quiet kitchen, filled with the scent of fresh coffee and sunlight through the windows, a battle was won, not just for Ava, but for the life Amelia had fought to reclaim. A week later, Amelia and Ava moved into their new apartment. It was small, just 2 bedrooms and a modest kitchen, but it was hers. She hung Ava's name in colorful letters above the crib and set a photo of her husband on the dresser. But this wasn't a shrine to the past, it was a foundation for the future. Gideon helped move boxes. He even fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom, rolling up his sleeves and laughing when the water sprayed him in the face. "I'm a billionaire," he joked. "But apparently I still can't install a washer properly." Amelia smiled. "You're not bad at it, honestly." They stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by open boxes, soft music playing in the background. "This place," she said, "it's a beginning." Gideon looked around. "You've built something here, something beautiful." She turned to him, hesitant. "Will you still visit?" His answer was immediate. "Every time you let me." Life found a rhythm again. Amelia started volunteering at a local shelter for women and children. Ava began daycare. Gideon's visits grew more frequent, always with groceries, new books for Ava, or just coffee and quiet conversation. But something lingered between them. One night after dinner, they sat on the couch watching Ava nap on a blanket nearby. Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to be afraid of needing people," she whispered. "Now I think I'm just afraid of losing the ones who stay." Gideon turned to face her, his voice gentle. "I don't plan on going anywhere." They looked at each other for a long moment, but neither made a move. The question hung between them, unspoken but undeniable. Would they dare take the next step? Maybe not tonight, but soon. 6 months passed. Ava's health flourished. Amelia's laugh returned. And Gideon, he became more than a friend. He was there for birthdays, doctor appointments, and bedtime stories. They weren't lovers, not yet. But they were something stronger, partners in life. One Sunday morning, while Ava played in the park, Gideon pushed her on the swing while Amelia watched from a bench. A woman nearby smiled at them. "You have a beautiful family." Neither corrected her. Later, Amelia said quietly, "That didn't feel like a lie." Gideon smiled, brushing hair from her face, because it wasn't. On the anniversary of the night they met, Gideon surprised her. He brought out the old navy coat, the one he had wrapped around Ava on the roadside, and gave it to her in a shadow box frame. "This saved us," she said softly. "No," he replied. "You saved her. I just gave you a moment to rest." They stood in silence, holding hands as Ava tugged at Gideon's pant leg, babbling excitedly. Amelia looked at them both and felt something deep settle in her chest. Peace. Not every fairy tale starts with a kiss. Sometimes it starts with a jacket in the rain, and sometimes that's more than enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of hope, healing, and unexpected second chances. Thank you for watching.